The famous table, negotiating from a place of value. Last week's note was about speaking to Alice, and lots of people seem to resonate with the message. Today we will talk about the famous table. You've most likely heard the question, what do you bring to the table? This famous table is a table of negotiation. In my journey of life, I've had to negotiate a lot of things, some big, some small, some formal, and some casual. One thing I can tell you from my negotiation experiences is that your chance of getting a yes is always higher when you are negotiating from a place of value. As much as it's true that you do not lose anything by taking your shots most times, you can't simply expect to get a yes just because you ask. So I'll go ahead and share a few thoughts with you about the table. While employees are looking for a job that pays more and demands less time, employers are looking for employees who can churn out high quality work in less time for the least possible pay. This just implies that as an employee who wants to get paid more, you need to find ways to increase the value you deliver to your employer and reduce the time you spend doing it. This will increase your value on the table of negotiation. This analogy also applies to business people seeking contracts. You're trying to maximize your profit and reduce your costs. The person who is looking to give you a contract wants to get the best quality for the lowest price and in the shortest possible time. If they perceive that you are the best fit based on these criteria I have mentioned, you are likely to land the contract. I just used the word perceive. It's important to know that your value and your perceived value are not always the same. What helps you win on the table is your perceived value. What helps you win after the table is your actual value. So you want to find ways to increase both. One thing that can definitely drop your value on the table of negotiation is when you negotiate from a place of need. What do I mean by this? If, for instance, you have no source of income and someone offers to pay you $10 for a service you should be charging $50, you may be tempted to compromise on your pricing just because, well, you need to eat. But if you are pretty comfortable and not needy, it becomes more difficult for people to pay you less than you are worth unless you yourself do not know your worth. HR managers and business people understand the psychology of perceived value, and if they perceive that you are worth less than your actual worth, it may count against you. But if by some chance you can increase your perceived value to them, you are more likely to get what you ask for. Your value and your perceived value give you an edge on the table of negotiation. I'll give you a typical example of perceived value. If you go to a business meeting seeking a 50 million naira contract, you definitely can't go there on a motorcycle. And by motorcycle, I'm talking of Okada. That would be a big mistake, and in most cases, you can kiss your contract goodbye. It's not that they don't like your face, and in all honesty, you may be the best man for the job, but that singular event will reduce your perceived value and hamper your chances on the table. Someone else who is probably less competent than you are but arrives in a Rolls Royce may have a higher chance of getting the contract. This is not about living a fake life, it's about perceived value. That car gives the impression that you've handled the kind of money you are about to be given for the contract, and they will feel a sense of security and entrusting such money to you again. This phenomenon is one of the key reasons why goods of ostentation will remain in demand. And believe it or not, this is one of the reasons why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The higher your perceived value, the higher your chances of winning at the table, and the more tables you win at, the higher your value. A similar analogy can be painted for someone with a lower perceived value. Even the Bible says in Matthew 25:29, "For to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away." Call it a vicious cycle, but it is what it is. The moment your value and your perceived value are high, it's easier to ride on that leverage to keep growing. But as the saying goes, Rome was not built in a day, and it usually takes time to get to the point where your value becomes so visible that it reduces the amount of inertia you have to overcome. So to the big question, knowing this, what should I do, especially if I'm still at the bottom of the food chain? 3 things. 1, increase your value. This is so important because if you win at the table and you can't show real value, you will lose credibility. To increase your value, you must do the actual work. You need to take the time to grow your skill set and portfolio such that when you get what you are negotiating for, you will be able to deliver. We talked a bit about this on episode 4. Increase your perceived value, that's number 2. As we said before, perceived value isn't always the same as your actual value. This is where packaging comes in. The Okada and Rolls Royce example I talked about earlier is an example of packaging. Number 3, speak to as many Alices as you can. Remember that most times you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by taking your chances. So by all means, take the chances. And so it's not enough to just walk up randomly to Alice and speak. By human nature, people are selfish and everyone wants to know if a relationship is mutually beneficial before they commit to it. To this effect, if you are not negotiating from a place of value, you have a higher chance of getting a no. This is where we wrap up today's episode. I trust that you got value for your time, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Have a beautiful week and keep being amazing. My name is Murphy Nnamdi Wachuba.